8 investment applications that everyone should be familiar with. Let's begin immediately with the first one, which is Interactive Brokers. Interactive Brokers is a brokerage firm, as the name implies, and I am convinced that among all the platforms we will be discussing in this video, it is the most secure because they are also publicly traded. You can view their stock and invest in the very broker you are utilizing, which is quite advantageous. For those who might not be aware, this means that their financial figures are practically public, allowing you to analyze everything they are doing. In other words, it offers significantly more transparency than other platforms that are entirely private, where you cannot review anything. In contrast, Interactive Brokers is completely public and has been in the market for numerous years. Another significant aspect is that it opens up the entire world to you. Literally, as you can observe here, you have access to 160 markets within 36 countries and specifically 28 currencies, making it a truly extensive platform. We could also mention that a drawback is that for beginners, it might initially be somewhat intricate. Nonetheless, something I consistently emphasize is that when you embark on the journey of investing in the stock market and you desire to persist and continue learning, starting with a basic platform is excellent. However, when you wish to progress to the next level, you will likely need to transfer all your capital, all the funds or stocks you hold in one brokerage to another. That's precisely why it is crucial right from the start to understand what your objectives are and what you intend to achieve with your investments in the future. Interactive Brokers is well suited for long-term investment, for trading, and for investing in various assets such as ETFs, stocks, bonds, and more. When it comes to commissions, if we compare them with several platforms on this list, they may not be the most competitive, but if you plan to trade or invest for the long term, it could potentially work quite effectively. Let's transition to discussing the subsequent platform, which is XTB. We've already delved into this one quite extensively. This platform is predominantly concentrated on the European market, which means you can of course invest in the broader market through stocks and ETFs, authentic ones just like with Interactive Brokers, but you also have the option to invest via CFDs. Therefore, this will be contingent upon your preferences, and they do not impose commissions up to $100,000 or 100,000 euros in our account, which is rather advantageous. As I previously mentioned, it is centered in Europe, so you will encounter many ETFs that you won't find on other platforms we will discuss in this video because they are exclusively focused on the US market. Thus, it is crucial to bear this in mind concerning deposit and withdrawal matters. We could assert it somewhat surpasses Interactive Brokers. In XTB, you have the capability to deposit directly using either a credit or debit card, which is remarkably straightforward. Something I utilized or demonstrated on my secondary channel is that with applications like Plenty Dollar app, which are applications I can top up in dollars like that account or card they provide, I can directly deposit into XTB without incurring any fees. Thus, the $200 I have in Plenty or Litio or Dollar app are $200 I deposit into XTB and they remain $200 in XTB. This implies there won't be any conversion or the like because I already top up my account. It converts to dollars and those dollars are one-to-one, the same in XTB as in Dollar app. Therefore, in that regard, it's also quite easy and in a way it possesses numerous functions and very good features. I also demonstrated the process of withdrawing, and it does have a few shortcomings in that area to be honest, but it offers very good features when it comes to international withdrawals, particularly with Bancolombia. I don't wish to elaborate excessively about this broker because if I spend too much time discussing any platform, people begin to speculate that I'm being compensated or sponsored, which is not the case. I simply discuss these platforms because I am aware they are beneficial and I know you can utilize them without encountering a headache. So essentially that's X. I also have videos on my channel and my secondary channel discussing the advantages and disadvantages, details, withdrawals, deposits, and so on. My intention in this video is for you to fully understand and thoroughly comprehend these brokers. Let's proceed to the subsequent one, which is Hapi, and this particular one is entirely focused on investing in the US stock market from Latin America in general. As its name implies, it is exclusively available for individuals in Latin America and is centered on stocks, ETFs, and cryptocurrencies. However, to be completely honest, investing in crypto through Hapi is not the most optimal option for me personally. It doesn't offer a wide array of investment options either, and it has relatively high fees and spreads, so I'm not particularly interested. Nevertheless, in terms of stocks and ETFs, I feel it's a platform that has expanded significantly. It's a platform with a substantial number of users. I believe they've reached approximately 500,000 users as I read a few days ago, but it's still experiencing growth. And as I mentioned, it's accessible not only in Colombia, but also in countries like Argentina, Mexico, Peru, and so forth. I am unable to provide extensive details about this particular platform compared to the others because, truthfully, it is quite similar in nature. The primary distinction is that this one focuses on the US stock market, whereas Interactive Brokers encompasses 160 global markets, and XTB has a substantial emphasis on both European and US markets, but here it is exclusively centered on the US. Concerning the commissions, they do not entirely persuade me when engaging in buying and selling activities, but it functions similarly to most platforms when you pursue long-term strategies. You don't really notice them significantly, and substantial amounts are invested because, well, here it indicates you can commence investing from $5 effectively, but if you invest incrementally, all your funds will be consumed by commissions and you'll have to wait an eternity just to recoup the fees unless you engage in activities like day trading, but that's where another issue emerges. Speaking of the topic, just like with Insights, which offers portfolios and such but isn't designed for trading, Happy isn't intended for trading either. Happy is geared towards long-term investment with very straightforward, basic applications compared to, for instance, Interactive Brokers and XTB, which do possess their own tools for trading and for delving deeper into the investment world on a daily basis and not merely something like growth value or long-term investment. So, well, there we have this other platform. Moving on to the subsequent one, which is eToro. eToro is also quite an established investment platform that has undergone numerous changes recently. There was the issue of increased commissions, which I didn't particularly appreciate, but it remains very competitive. Additionally, eToro also encompasses stock market investments, particularly in the US, but also in other markets and cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies, well, don't entirely convince me either, but the option is available. For crypto, I always prefer, if I'm going to buy and transfer to wallets, a super fast, super simple exchange. I buy and that's it, I transfer it there, nothing like platforms of this style. However, what this one does have, which is very important and always stands out, is social trading or social investing. What happens? They possess something akin to a social network centered around investment, correct? An investment around this social network implies that you can invest directly via this platform, but you can also replicate investors who are within the same platform by observing their actions, examining what they invest in, what they abstain from investing in, what they are selling, what they are purchasing, and so forth. This is something that I genuinely believe almost none of the other platforms we previously mentioned possess. Therefore, it serves as their significant, let's say, distinguishing factor, and you can find a plethora of information, meaning it is essentially a social network where you enter and there are comments from individuals that require curation. In other words, you must consider whom to heed and whom to disregard, because there are perspectives, just like in politics and other matters, where someone from one side tells you one thing and someone from the opposite side tells you another. Thus, you always have to be evaluating based on data who is correct, what actions should be taken, and what should be avoided. So it's beneficial. It's an option we have to be able to enter. However, for deposits, I am not fond of it. For deposits, it's either bank transfer or card, which could be advantageous if a bank transfer through, for instance, $Appenty, is not an issue for you. In fact, I am planning to create a video about that to demonstrate how to deposit, which turns out to be quite straightforward. However, the minimum deposit through this particular method is approximately $500, whereas with a card, it's essentially $200 if it's your initial deposit or $50 if it's your subsequent deposit, which also varies depending on the country you are situated in. Then withdrawing funds can be somewhat tedious, but many individuals prefer eToro due to its user-friendly nature. It's an exceptionally easy-to-use platform, very straightforward, quite dynamic, and highly interactive. I mean, literally, you enter and it's like, I don't know, something incredibly simple, very easy to navigate, very straightforward to locate things and to comprehend it. The others I might have mentioned could be slightly more complex when you begin using them. Lastly, we have Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab is a platform quite similar to Interactive Brokers in terms of investment opportunities, but it primarily allows you to invest within the United States since it originates from the US. It's one of the most traditional companies, providing a significant level of security. Additionally, it recently did something, and when I say recently, it was practically a year or two ago. Sometimes I lose track of time, and if you were one of the individuals who invested in TD Ameritrade or ever heard of TD Ameritrade, well, Schwab absorbed TD Ameritrade, and now all its users are part of Schwab. That's why it gained a lot of popularity, because it was already popular, especially in the United States, but some time ago it gained more popularity due to Ameritrade because many people loved Ameritrade. However, after the absorption, it became Schwab, and that's when it started gaining a lot of recognition, especially in Latin America regarding Charles Schwab. So, well, it's an option to consider. I also think they have changed the requirement that used to be $50,000 to open an account, and that's no longer the case. However, the account opening process is a bit tedious, and as I mentioned, for deposits, we often have to rely on apps like Dollar App that give us an account in the United States. Honestly, if it weren't for these apps, many brokers on this list would be out because the deposit process would be very tedious, it would be horrible. But if you have the possibility to open an account on these platforms, if you've made it this far, leave a dollar with wings emoji to let me know who reached this point in the video and tell me which broker you finally chose. And additionally, please remember, particularly in this specific video, my primary intention was merely to mention them to you and explain which ones are functional, which ones you have the capability to open, but ultimately it is up to you to determine which is the most suitable for you. As I previously mentioned, you can search for the optimal broker to invest in, Charo, Interactive Brokers, XHappy, and everyone will provide you with different insights. It is not that one is being dishonest and another is being truthful. Rather, each individual is expressing their perspective and stating that this is the best option for them for certain reasons. However, your circumstances might be entirely different and you might want to begin investing and you might prefer an alternative one instead. I will include all the necessary links in the video description so you can review them and open an account if you wish. Goodbye.